the civilizations beneath our feet that history refuses to forget. Is it a real possibility, or just a figment of humanity's imagination? A mere urban legend? Is this rumor ultimately a good thing or a bad thing? Tonight, once again, we'll examine whether it's true or not from a Japanese perspective. Section 1. Hook. Somewhere beneath a city in the American Southwest, in the 1930s, a mining engineer named G. Warren Shufelt became convinced he had found something impossible. Using a device he called a radio X-ray, a piece of equipment he had invented himself, whose operation he could not fully explain, he claimed to be detecting a vast network of tunnels far beneath the streets of Los Angeles. Not natural cave formations, not old sewers or forgotten utility lines. Rooms, interconnected chambers, a labyrinthine underground city, precisely laid out in the shape of a lizard, stretching for miles beneath the surface of one of the fastest-growing cities in America. And according to a Hopi elder named Little Chief Greenleaf, who Shufelt said had confirmed his findings, this underground network had been built and was once inhabited by a race of beings the Hopi called the Lizard People, an ancient civilization that had retreated underground thousands of years ago after a catastrophe that destroyed the surface world. In February 1934, the Los Angeles Times ran the story on its front page. The city of Los Angeles granted Shufelt an excavation permit. He drilled, he dug, he found nothing. But the story did not die. Because the story of beings living beneath the surface of the earth, hidden from us, parallel to us, watching us from below, is not a single story. It is thousands of stories from thousands of cultures across thousands of years. And that kind of persistence demands an answer. Tonight, we go looking for one. Section 2. Introduction. The concept of underground people, beings who live beneath the surface of the earth, in tunnels, caves, or vast subterranean civilizations, appears in the mythology, folklore, religion, and reported experiences of cultures on every inhabited continent. The ancient Greeks described the underworld's inhabitants. Norse mythology filled the underground with dwarves, dark elves, and the dead. Celtic folklore spoke of the fair folk retreating beneath the hills. Native American traditions across dozens of distinct nations include accounts of emergence from underground worlds, or of beings who still dwell there. In Hindu cosmology, the Nagas, serpent beings of great power, inhabit a rich underground kingdom called Patala. In Japanese folklore, underground realms are home to both the dead and supernatural beings called Oni. Modern urban legends speak of tunnel-dwelling communities beneath the streets of New York, Las Vegas, and other major cities. Reports of strange beings encountered in mines, caves, and tunnels have come from credible witnesses across centuries. And then there are the more disturbing accounts, from the American Southwest, from the mountains of Central Asia, from the tunnels beneath ancient temples, of encounters with beings that did not seem human, in spaces that were not natural. What is happening here? Is this pure mythology, the universal human impulse to populate the dark places we cannot see? Or is something else driving this pattern across so many unconnected cultures? Tonight, we examine the evidence, the legends, and the deeply strange cases that sit right on the line between the two. Section 3. Background. The idea of underground beings is so old and so widespread that tracking its origins is genuinely difficult. The oldest written accounts we have come from Mesopotamia. The Sumerians described a land of the dead called the Kur, a dark underworld where the dead existed as shadows. The Epic of Gilgamesh, one of the oldest surviving literary works in human history, includes a descent into this underground realm. In ancient Egypt, the Duat, the realm through which the sun god Ra traveled at night, was also conceived as an underground world, filled with beings both helpful and hostile. But here is what makes the pattern interesting. These are not simply metaphors for death and the afterlife. Across many cultures, the underground beings are described as living, active, powerful, sometimes interacting with surface people. They are not the dead. They are something else entirely. The dwarves of Norse mythology are master craftsmen who forge magical weapons in underground forges. The Celtic Tuatha Dé Danann, the divine beings of Irish mythology, retreated underground after being defeated by invading humans and continued to inhabit the city, the underground mounds, from which they still occasionally emerge. In Tibetan Buddhist tradition, there is a subterranean kingdom called Shambhala, sometimes described as being beneath the earth, sometimes as a hidden valley, but consistently described as a place of great spiritual advancement populated by beings of higher consciousness. In the traditions of the Pueblo peoples of the American Southwest, the Hopi, the Zuni, and others, the current world is not the first world humanity has inhabited. Previous worlds existed, were destroyed by catastrophe, and humanity emerged from underground to inhabit the next world. In some traditions, not all people emerged. Some remained below. This last idea, that a portion of humanity, or a parallel civilization, chose to remain underground, appears across cultures in ways that are striking in their consistency. What does it mean that so many independent traditions, separated by oceans and millennia, tell a version of the same story? Section 4, the complete story. Chapter 1. The Lizard People of Los Angeles. Let's return to that 1934 Los Angeles Times story, because the details are stranger than the headline suggests. Warren Shufelt was a mining engineer, a practical man, trained in geological survey. He was not, by background, someone inclined toward mystical thinking. His account began with a practical observation. While surveying the Los Angeles basin, his equipment was producing readings that he couldn't explain by reference to known geological formations. He began to develop his own theory about what was causing them. He eventually constructed what he called a radio X-ray device, something like a primitive dowsing rod combined with radio technology. He claimed it could detect hollow spaces underground. What he said it detected was extraordinary. A network of tunnels and rooms, some of them reportedly quite large, arranged in a deliberate pattern beneath the streets of downtown Los Angeles. He estimated the tunnels ran as deep as 1,500 feet in places. Through his connection with Little Chief Greenleaf, a Hopi man whose identity and exact statements have been difficult to verify historically, Shufelt claimed to have learned that these tunnels were built by a people the Hopi called the Lizard People, approximately 5,000 years ago, to shelter from a catastrophic meteor shower that was prophesied to destroy the surface world. The Lizard People, according to this account, stored vast quantities of food and golden tablets containing the history of their civilization in these underground chambers. They lived underground for years, waiting for the catastrophe to pass. And then, according to some versions of the legend, some of them simply never came back up. Shufelt drilled to 350 feet. He found no tunnels. The project was abandoned. But here is what the skeptical dismissal tends to overlook. There are extensive tunnel systems beneath the old sections of Los Angeles. Some date from Prohibition, some from much earlier. Their full extent has never been mapped. Shufelt may have found nothing. That does not prove there was nothing to find. Chapter 2. The Mel Waters Case and the Bottomless Pit. In 1997, a man named Mel Waters called in to the Art Bell radio program, one of the most listened-to late-night talk radio shows in America, with a story that immediately captured the imagination of millions of listeners. Waters claimed to own a parcel of land in Kittitas County, Washington State. On that land, he said, there was a hole, a perfectly circular hole, about 9 feet in diameter, lined with man-made stonework that showed no signs of aging. The hole, Waters said, was bottomless. He had lowered miles of fishing line into it without hitting bottom. He had dropped items into it, including, in one memorable account, a dead dog, and had seemingly received them back, or received something in their place, in ways that defied explanation. He also described seeing strange lights emanating from the hole at night, and experiencing unusual effects near it. Altered states of consciousness, equipment malfunctions, distortions of time. Mel Waters was never definitively identified. The land he described was searched for by journalists and investigators who could not locate it. The hole was never found. And yet the Mel Waters case became one of the most discussed accounts in American paranormal history. Why? Because it touched something deep. The image of a hole, perfectly made, ancient, going down without end, is a potent one. It suggests a passage, a connection to something below, an opening that someone, at some point, deliberately constructed. Whether Mel Waters was a genuine witness, an elaborate hoaxer, or someone whose experience was real but not what he thought it was, his story became a vessel for something larger than itself. Chapter 3. The Mole People, Urban Legend and Urban Reality in 1993, journalist Jennifer Toth published a book called The Mole People, documenting a community she claimed to have found living in the tunnels beneath New York City. According to Toth, thousands of people, homeless, mentally ill, driven underground by the failures of surface society, had established communities in the abandoned tunnels beneath Amtrak lines, beneath the subway system, in forgotten utility spaces and sealed-off platforms. She described people who had lived underground for years, who had established social hierarchies, informal economies, even schools, who had adapted to life without sunlight, in spaces where the surface world was something remembered but no longer inhabited. The book was controversial. Other journalists and tunnel explorers disputed some of its specific claims. The exact numbers were debated, but the core phenomenon was real. The New York tunnel community was documented by subsequent researchers, by urban explorers, by outreach workers. Hundreds of people, at minimum, had made lives in the infrastructure beneath one of the world's most densely populated cities. This is not a legend about lizard people or ancient civilizations. This is a documented social phenomenon, but it reveals something that cuts across the boundary between urban legend and urban reality. The underground is habitable. People do live there. Asterisk Chapter 4. The Dulce Base and the Conspiracy Underground. In the 1980s, a new chapter in underground being mythology emerged. This one with a distinctly modern flavor. The town of Dulce, New Mexico sits on the Jicarilla Apache Nation Reservation in the high desert near the Colorado border. Population: about 500. Beginning in the late 1970s, a cluster of reports began circulating in UFO research communities about an alleged underground base near Dulce, a joint human-alien facility, supposedly located deep beneath the Archuleta Mesa, where experiments of a profoundly disturbing nature were allegedly being conducted. A man named Paul Benowitz, an electronics engineer in Albuquerque, claimed to have intercepted electronic signals that he believed originated from this base. He described beings he called greys and reptilians conducting genetic experiments underground, with the knowledge and cooperation of elements of the U.S. government. The Dulce base story grew. Other alleged witnesses came forward. A man called Thomas Costello claimed to have worked as a security officer inside the base and to have escaped with photographs and documents, none of which were ever verified. The story became, in UFO research circles, one of the central texts of a much larger conspiracy framework. In 1988, a researcher named Phil Schneider claimed to have been involved in constructing underground bases and to have personally encountered underground beings during a tunnel boring incident in 1979. He described a firefight between humans and beings he called aliens. Schneider died in 1996 in circumstances his supporters called suspicious. The official ruling was suicide. The Dulce base story has never been confirmed by any verifiable evidence. It remains, in the judgment of mainstream researchers, a combination of government disinformation, individual delusion, and deliberate hoax. But the story spread further and lasted longer than most conspiracy theories of its era, because it answered a question people were already asking. If there are beings down there, what are they doing? Section 5. Theories. Theory 1. The anthropological explanation. Memories of real people. Some anthropologists have proposed that legends of underground people preserve real historical memories of actual human communities that lived in caves or underground structures. Cave dwelling is not mythological. It is documented history. From the Cappadocia region of Turkey, where entire underground cities capable of housing tens of thousands of people were carved from volcanic rock, to the cliff dwellings of the American Southwest, to the cave cities of Matmata and Tunisia, human beings have, throughout history, built extensive communities underground. Derinkuyu, the most extensively excavated of the Cappadocian underground cities, descends to at least 18 stories below the surface and could shelter approximately 20,000 people. It has ventilation shafts, wells, stables, churches, and storage rooms. It was used as recently as the 20th century. What if the legends of underground people are, in part, cultural memories of these real communities? Of neighbors or predecessors who chose to go underground, and in some cases stayed. Theory 2. The evolutionary perspective. Adaptations to underground life. Here is a scientific question that sounds like science fiction: that if a human population had lived underground isolated from the surface for a sufficient number of generations, what would happen to them? The answer, based on what we know about evolutionary biology and the adaptation of organisms to cave environments, is significant. Change, eyesight, unnecessary and permanent darkness might diminish over many generations. Skin pigmentation, which exists primarily as protection from UV radiation, would likely lighten. Hearing and touch, more useful in darkness, might become more acute. This is not speculation about ancient civilizations. It is straightforward evolutionary biology, applied to an unusual scenario. No evidence exists that any human population has undergone these changes. But the theoretical framework for what underground humans might eventually look like, pale, large-eyed, sensitive to light, maps remarkably well onto how underground beings are described across many cultural traditions. That parallel is either a coincidence or evidence of something we don't fully understand. Theory 3. The psychological dimension, the underground as inner space. Depth psychologists have argued that underground beings are projections of the unconscious mind. In Jungian psychology, the underground represents the unconscious, the parts of the psyche that are hidden from daylight awareness. The beings that inhabit it, whether in dreams, in mythology, or in hallucination, are personifications of the forces that operate below the threshold of conscious thought. Under this interpretation, every culture's underground beings represent what that culture has repressed, denied, or sent below the shadow, in Jungian terms. The frightening underground beings of Western tradition reflect Western culture's repressed aspects. The wise, enlightened underground beings of Tibetan tradition reflect a different relationship with the hidden self. This interpretation is compelling and unfalsifiable. It explains the universality of the pattern without requiring anything beneath the ground at all, but it doesn't explain the specific, concrete details that witnesses across cultures tend to report. The tunnels, the architecture, the technology, the encounters that feel more like geography than psychology. Theory 4. The paranormal possibility, beings beyond our classification. A growing community of researchers in what's sometimes called high strangeness studies, a branch of paranormal investigation that takes reported phenomena seriously without necessarily accepting any single explanation, has noted something interesting about underground being reports. The beings described are extraordinarily diverse. Some are described as human but pale and adapted. Some are described as reptilian. Some as small, gray, and large-eyed. Some as luminous and apparently benevolent. Some as menacing and territorial. This diversity, rather than being evidence against a real phenomenon, might actually suggest that underground beings is a category, like surface animals, that encompasses many different kinds of entities rather than a single species. What if the underground is not the home of one hidden civilization, but an environment, like the ocean, that supports many different forms of life, including some that occasionally interact with the surface world in ways that generate the reports we have been discussing tonight? This is not a scientific hypothesis, but it is a framework for taking the diversity of reports seriously. Theory 5. The government knowledge conspiracy. The most radical version of the underground being conspiracy theory holds that government agencies, primarily American military and intelligence institutions, have had confirmed knowledge of underground non-human beings for decades and have suppressed this knowledge. Under this framework, underground bases like the alleged Dulce facility are real. Treaties between human governments and underground beings have been signed. Technology has been exchanged. And the entire apparatus of UFO denial and conspiracy debunking exists to prevent the surface population from learning the truth. No verified evidence supports this theory. But in the age of declassified CIA documents confirming that the government did run secret programs like MKUltra, that the military did conduct secret radiation experiments on civilians, that surveillance programs of extraordinary scope were built and concealed, the reflexive dismissal of all government secrecy claims has become harder to sustain. The conspiracy theory is almost certainly wrong in its specific claims, but the general principle that powerful institutions sometimes conceal things from the public is not wrong at all. Section 6. Deep analysis. Contradiction 1. The universality that can't be explained away. The single most difficult fact to explain about underground being mythology is its universality. Independent cultures, separated by oceans, by millennia, by every possible barrier to cultural transmission, tell versions of the same story. The conventional explanation is that this reflects a universal human psychological pattern. The underground is dark and unknown, so we populate it with beings, just as we populate the darkened, unknown sky with gods. This explanation is satisfying, but it has a limit. It explains why cultures would place beings underground. It does not explain why those beings, across cultures, tend to share specific characteristics: pale or luminous appearance, underground architecture, advanced knowledge, occasional surface interaction. Those specific shared characteristics require a more specific explanation. Either there is a deep common ancestor to all these traditions that we haven't identified, or the traditions are describing something real, something present across the environments inhabited by these diverse cultures. Neither explanation is comfortable. Contradiction 2. The witnesses who shouldn't exist among the accounts of underground encounters. Some come from witnesses whose credibility is difficult to dismiss entirely. Mining engineers who reported strange sounds and glimpses of beings in deep shafts. Soldiers who reported encounters during tunnel operations in wars from Vietnam to more recent conflicts. Cave explorers who returned from deep systems with accounts of sounds, lights, and presences that they could not explain. These are not people with obvious motivations to fabricate. They are people reporting experiences that disrupted their understanding of what was possible, often at significant cost to their professional reputations. What is the right response to testimony from credible witnesses who report experiences that don't fit our model of the world? Dismissing them entirely is intellectually lazy. Accepting their accounts uncritically is credulity. But there is a third option: taking the testimony seriously as data, while remaining agnostic about its ultimate interpretation. That is harder than either dismissal or belief, but it may be the only intellectually honest position available. Contradiction 3. The underground we know about is already extraordinary. Here is the challenge that genuine archaeology poses to the underground being mystery, that we already know that human beings have built extraordinary things underground. Derinkuyu. The catacombs beneath Paris, which extend for nearly 200 miles and contain the remains of 6 million people. The underground city of Nushabad in Iran, with its 3-level tunnel system. The tunnels of Petra, carved into rose-red cliffs. The subterranean aqueducts of the Nazca in Peru, stretching for miles through desert. These are not legends. They are documented, excavated, measurable. If known, human civilizations built all of this without modern technology, often in secret, often to preserve knowledge or populations from surface catastrophe. What is the absolute limit of what might have been built underground by civilizations we haven't yet found? We don't know. And that uncertainty, grounded not in wild speculation, but in the actual documented history of what human beings have done underground, is perhaps the most legitimate source of the mystery we've been exploring tonight. That Section 7 modern implements the underground being legend lives today on multiple levels simultaneously. The most literal level, it exists in the communities of people living in tunnels and infrastructure spaces beneath major cities worldwide. New York, Las Vegas, where the flood channels beneath the Strip have housed a significant community of tunnel dwellers for years. Chicago, Moscow, the tunnels beneath Hanoi, dug during the Vietnam War and still partly occupied. These are real people, real underground communities, not mythological, documented, often photographed, occasionally served by outreach workers. The conspiratorial level. The Dulce-based story and its descendants have grown into a sprawling online ecosystem connecting underground beings to alien contact, government secrecy, and deep state mythology. These communities are large, active, and have real effects on how their members understand and interact with the world. At the scientific level, genuine research into deep cave ecosystems has produced discoveries that, in their own way, support the idea that the underground is far more alive than surface dwellers assume. Organisms have been found in caves that have been sealed for millions of years, evolving in complete isolation. Some cave systems are biological time capsules, preserving evolutionary lineages that have disappeared from the surface world. The underground is not empty. It never was. And at the cultural level, the underground people have never left our storytelling. From the dwarves of Tolkien to the Morlocks of H.G. Wells to the upside down of Stranger Things, the idea of a parallel civilization beneath ours is one of the most generative concepts in human fiction. That we keep telling this story, that we keep sending characters underground, that we keep imagining what or who might be there. That persistence is not random. It reflects something real about human psychology, about our relationship to the unknown, about the parts of our world that we genuinely cannot see. Section 8. Final question. Tonight we have traveled from the mythology of ancient Sumer to the tunnels beneath Los Angeles. From the underground cities of Cappadocia to the flood channels beneath Las Vegas. From the philosophical underground of Carl Jung to the conspiratorial underground of Dulce, New Mexico. What have we found? We have found a pattern so consistent, so widespread, so persistent across independent cultures and centuries that it demands to be taken seriously. Even if we cannot agree on what it means, that we have found documented evidence that human beings have lived underground, in cities, in tunnel systems, in caves, across the full span of recorded history, on every continent that we have. Found witness accounts from people with no obvious motivation to lie, describing experiences underground that they could not fit into their understanding of the world. That we have found that the scientific frontier of deep earth research is producing genuine surprises. Organisms evolving in sealed caves, vast water reservoirs in the mantle, structural anomalies in the inner core that remind us how little we actually know about what happens beneath the surface. And we have found that the human imagination cannot leave the underground alone, cannot stop populating it, cannot resist the idea that there is something down there, in the dark, parallel to us and unknown. Is that imagination responding to nothing? Or is it responding to something? Something it perceives in the myths of 100 cultures, in the testimony of witnesses across centuries, in the simple, undeniable fact that we have never fully explored the space beneath our own feet. Here is the question I want to leave you with tonight. You walk on the ground every day. You move across a surface that sits above miles of unknown territory. Territory that no human being has ever seen, that no probe has ever reached, that our best science can only model and infer. What if the most important discovery in human history is not somewhere out in space, but directly beneath where you are standing right now? And if something is down there, something that has been there long enough to appear in the oldest stories humanity has ever told, why haven't they come up? Leave your answer in the comments. Your voice is what keeps this channel alive. Don't forget to subscribe and drop a like. See you in the next episode.